Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. I grew up believing my life was already written for me. Not in a sad way, at least not at first. It was the kind of story everyone around me seemed to approve of. My parents, Robert and Elaine, were close friends with the Harringtons since before I was born. They lived just 2 houses down from us in the suburbs of North Carolina, and every summer the two families blended into one. Barbecues, pool parties, family trips. I never knew where our family ended, and theirs began. And right in the center of it all was Daniel Harrington. Daniel was my childhood friend, my partner in trouble, the boy who stole my crayons in kindergarten and then gave me his cookie as an apology. He was steady, warm, always smiling in that easy way that made people feel safe. When we were kids, our parents would tease us. One day you two will get married, and then we'll really be family. We'd blush, roll our eyes, and run off to play. But somewhere along the way, the joke became a promise. By the time I was 15, my mother started dropping hints more openly. Charlotte, you're lucky, sweetheart. Most girls your age don't know who they'll end up with, but you already have someone who loves you, someone who was practically made for you. And I believed her. Daniel and I slid into that idea like it was the most natural thing in the world. By high school, we were officially dating. Our friends envied us. Teachers called us the golden pair. My life felt simple, certain, almost too perfect. But certainty can be dangerous. It makes you blind. I remember the night of my 17th birthday vividly. My best friend, Emily, had organized a surprise party at her place. Emily was everything I wasn't. Spontaneous, wild, unapologetically loud. Where I was careful with words, she spoke whatever came to her mind. Where I planned every step, she danced in circles without worrying where she'd land. And yet, we balanced each other out. She made me laugh when I overthought, and I calmed her down when she burned too brightly. That night, as everyone sang happy birthday, Daniel stood behind me, his hands resting gently on my shoulders. I looked around the room, and I thought to myself, this is it. This is my life. Friends who love me. A best friend who would never let me fall. A boyfriend who would one day become my husband. Parents who adore me. I thought nothing could break that picture. Years passed quickly. College came and went. Daniel and I stayed together even when we went to different schools. Distance didn't seem to hurt us. It almost made us stronger. He would visit me on weekends, take me out for dinner, and talk about our future. He was steady as always, and I felt safe. By the time we graduated, our parents had already begun planning our wedding. It wasn't an official engagement yet, but everyone knew. Daniel and I didn't argue with it. Why would we? This was what we had been raised for. My father once said, marrying into the Harrington family isn't just about love, Charlotte. It's about loyalty, about keeping bonds strong. I nodded because I understood. It wasn't just about Daniel. It was about tradition. About families who had built decades of friendship, now tying it into blood. Emily was my maid of honor the moment the engagement became official. She screamed when I told her, hugging me so tightly I couldn't breathe. You're going to be the most beautiful bride, Char, and I'll be right there next to you, just like always. Her excitement warmed me. She'd been my rock through late-night study sessions, through heartbreaks of other friends, through fights with my parents. She was the sister I never had. Life at that moment seemed perfect. But sometimes perfection is just the silence before the storm. Looking back now, I see the little cracks that were always there. The way Daniel sometimes looked at me as though I were more of an obligation than a choice. The way Emily would linger when she hugged him. Her laughter just a touch too sweet when he made a joke. The way my parents seemed more invested in the wedding than in my happiness. But I ignored it all. Because I wanted to believe. I wanted the fairy tale I'd been promised. If only I had known then, what was waiting for me on my wedding day would destroy everything I thought I knew. The morning of my wedding felt like a dream I had rehearsed my whole life. When I opened my eyes, sunlight streamed through the white curtains in my childhood bedroom, painting everything in a golden glow. For a brief moment, I lay there still, clutching the sheets, trying to believe it was real. Today, I would become Daniel's wife. Today, the years of promises, of parents' expectations, of whispered childhood secrets would become truth. My mother bustled in before I even had time to sit up. "Charlotte, sweetheart, wake up! We've got a schedule to follow." Her voice was firm but trembling with excitement. She had dreamt of this day almost as much as I had, or maybe more. The house was already alive with noise, relatives rushing in, makeup artists unpacking their kits, the faint clatter of dishes being set for breakfast downstairs. My father peeked into my room with his proud smile, the kind of smile that made me feel like I was still his little girl. "My beautiful bride," he said softly, before slipping away again. Emily was the first bridesmaid to arrive. She burst into my room, squealing, hugging me so tight the air left my lungs. "Oh my God, Char! This is it! You're getting married! You're going to be Mrs. Harrington by tonight!" Her eyes sparkled, her voice bubbling with excitement. She always had that kind of energy, filling up the room, pulling everyone into her orbit. I laughed, though my stomach fluttered with nerves. "I know, it doesn't feel real." She grabbed my hands. "You deserve this. You deserve everything. Daniel's lucky, and you're going to walk down that aisle and blow everyone away." Her words calmed me. She always knew how to make me believe in myself when doubt crept in. Hours passed in a blur of brushes, curling irons, and whispered prayers. When the stylist finally zipped me into my gown, I turned toward the mirror and barely recognized myself. The dress was ivory silk, embroidered with delicate lace, hugging my figure, but flowing like water when I moved. A small diamond tiara sat on my head, catching the light, and for the first time, I saw myself not as a girl, but as a bride. My mother's eyes welled up. "You look just like I did when I married your father," she whispered. The drive to the church felt like a movie. Crowds had gathered outside, neighbors who had watched me grow up, all craning their necks for a glimpse of the bride. When the car doors opened, cameras flashed, relatives clapped, and I smiled, hiding the nervous drum of my heart. Inside the church, everything was perfect. Roses lined the aisle, candles flickered softly, and the organist began to play. My father held out his arm. "Ready, Charlotte?" I nodded, though my knees wobbled. More than ever. When the doors opened and I stepped into that aisle, I saw Daniel waiting at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored black suit, his hair neatly combed, his expression made me want to cry. He wasn't smiling. He was watching me with something deeper. Love, pride, maybe even awe. For a moment, I forgot the world. It was just him and me. Each step felt like a chapter closing behind me, leading toward a new one. I was ready to write. Guests stood, turning to watch me pass. Emily caught my eye from the front row, grinning, giving me a little thumbs up. And then, it happened. Just as the minister cleared his throat to begin, the heavy doors of the church burst open. The sound echoed through the hall, a sharp break in the music. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man walked in, tall, dark-haired, dressed in a wrinkled suit as if he had run here. His face was flushed, his eyes wild, desperate. He pointed at me. "She can't marry him!" His voice thundered against the silence. "Charlotte is mine! She's been with me this whole time!" The world tilted. For a split second, I thought it was some sick prank. My heart slammed against my chest, and I froze where I stood. Laughter didn't come. Gasps filled the air instead. Whispers began, hissing, multiplying. "What is this?" my father barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. The stranger walked down the aisle, his gaze locked on me, unwavering. "Tell them, Charlotte. Tell them about us, about the nights we spent together, about the lies." My mouth went dry. I don't even know you." My voice cracked, trembling, but he didn't stop. Daniel's face turned pale. His jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. His eyes, those steady, kind eyes, were filled with something I had never seen before. Hurt. Betrayal. "You don't know me?" the man shouted. He pulled something from his pocket. Photos, printed photos. He threw them onto the aisle, and they scattered like confetti. Blurred images of me, or someone who looked like me. With him. Laughing. Holding hands. "No," I cried, stumbling forward. That's not me, I swear." But the crowd didn't believe. I heard the whispers, the sharp tones. Shameful. On her wedding day? How could she? My mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father looked at me as though I had shattered every dream he ever held. Emily's smile was gone. She sat rigid, wide-eyed, silent. Daniel took a step back, his chest heaving. Charlotte? His voice was low, broken. How could you do this to me? To us? I shook my head frantically, tears blurring my vision. Daniel, please, I swear to you. I don't know this man. I've never seen him in my life. But the man only smirked. She's lying. Ask her why she never told you about the nights we spent together. Ask her why she came running back to me when you were away. The whispers grew louder. My world caved in. Daniel's parents stood, their faces twisted with disgust. This wedding is a disgrace, his mother spat. We welcomed you into our family, Charlotte, and this is what you give us. Stop, I begged. My voice was raw, desperate. This isn't true. Someone is setting me up. But Daniel turned away, pain carving into his features. I reached for him, but he pulled back. I thought I knew you. I thought you were different. But you played me. You played all of us. My heart broke in that moment. The church that had felt like heaven now felt like a coffin closing in. My parents avoided my eyes. Emily looked down. Daniel's shoulders slumped in defeat. And then, like a cruel twist of fate, his mother whispered something into his ear. His jaw tightened, and he turned not to me, but to Emily. Marry me, then, he said. The air left my lungs. Emily gasped. What, Daniel? Marry me, he repeated. If Charlotte can betray me, then at least I'll marry someone I can trust. The church erupted into chaos. Gasps, shouts, protests. I felt like I was watching a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Emily hesitated, her face pale, her lips trembling, but then she nodded. Okay. My knees buckled. I wanted to scream, to run, to tear the walls down around me. Instead, I walked. Slowly, blindly, my gown trailing behind me like a ghost. Past the pews, past the whispers, past the life I thought was mine. Out the church doors, into the blinding sunlight, alone. On my wedding day, I didn't just lose a groom. I lost everything. The church doors closed behind me, and the sound of them slamming echoed like a final judgment. I walked down the steps in my wedding gown, my heels scraping against the stone, my veil fluttering in the summer wind like torn wings. People had gathered outside, and their whispers wrapped around me like knives. There she is. Shameful. How could she show her face? She cheated. On him. On their wedding day. I wanted to scream at them, to beg them to listen. But what good were words now? Lies had already been stitched into their minds. All they saw was a fallen bride, her crown broken, her future shattered. Children pointed, women shook their heads, men muttered as if I were filth. Every step I took was heavy, dragging the weight of humiliation with me. I kept walking, even as tears blurred the world. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. By the time I reached my parents' house, the dress that once made me feel like a queen now felt like a prison. My train was muddy, the lace snagged by twigs, my makeup streaked down my cheeks. I stumbled up the porch, desperate for comfort, for my mother's arms, for my father's steady voice. But when the door opened, there was no comfort. My father stood there, his face like stone. Behind him, my mother's eyes were swollen, not from grief for me, but from shame. Daddy, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please? You have to believe me. It wasn't me. I don't even know that man. Stop. His voice cut me like a blade. Enough lies, Charlotte. I shook my head, clutching at his sleeve. I swear to you. You humiliated us, he snapped. You destroyed our name. Do you realize what you did? Years of friendship with the Harringtons ruined. Do you know what people are saying about us now? About me? About your mother? I flinched at his words. My mother didn't move closer. She didn't even look at me. She stood with her arms crossed, her lips pressed tight as if to keep her disgust from spilling out. I didn't do anything wrong, I cried. Someone set me up. I promise you. Why won't you believe me? Because the proof was there. My father roared. Photographs. Witnesses. On your wedding day, no less. Do you think we're fools? My legs trembled. Please, don't turn your back on me. I'm your daughter. His eyes hardened. Not anymore. You shamed us beyond repair. You are no daughter of mine. The words slammed into me like a blow. My mother finally looked at me then, but there was no love in her eyes. Only a cold, weary finality. She turned away and whispered, Leave, Charlotte. Just leave. I stood frozen on the porch, my body numb, until the door opened wider. And then, like the cruelest cut, they began throwing my belongings out. Dresses, shoes, books, little keepsakes I had collected since childhood, all tossed onto the porch like trash. Take your things, my father said, his voice void of emotion, and never come back. The door shut. Just like that. I fell to my knees in my wedding gown, surrounded by pieces of my life scattered at my feet. Neighbors watched from across the street, some whispering, others smirking at the drama unfolding before them. My humiliation was complete. I don't know how long I sat there, sobbing into my hands. Time didn't matter anymore. When I finally managed to stand, I gathered nothing. What use were possessions when your entire world had been stripped from you? There was only one thought left in my broken mind. Daniel. He had to listen. He had to see the truth in me, because if I lost him too, then what did I have left? Maybe if I could just speak to him, away from the noise, away from the lies, he would see my heart. He had loved me since we were children. That couldn't just disappear in one day. So I walked. In that ruined dress, barefoot now, my heels abandoned somewhere on the road. I walked all the way to the house that was supposed to be ours. The one we had toured together, where we had laughed about how to paint the walls, where he had kissed my forehead and said, "This will be our forever." The porch light was on. The house looked warm, alive. My heart pounded as I climbed the steps and reached for the door. I raised my hand to knock, but then I froze. Because I heard it. Laughter. Daniel's laughter. Deep, genuine, unbroken. And then Emily's, her high-pitched giggle, the same one I had heard 1,000 times in high school when she was flirting with boys. It rang through the door, too intimate, too comfortable. Confusion ripped through me. Hours ago, Daniel had looked destroyed, his face pale with betrayal, his voice breaking as he accused me. He had seemed like a man whose world had fallen apart. So why now, in this house that was supposed to be mine, was he laughing? Laughing like a man in love, laughing like he hadn't lost anything at all? I pressed my hand against the wood, my chest heaving. Slowly, silently, I moved along the porch until I reached the side window. The curtain was parted just enough, and what I saw stole the air from my lungs. Daniel and Emily were inside, together. But not just together. They were dressed casually now, like any couple settling into their home after a long day. She sat curled against him on the couch, his arm wrapped possessively around her. A bouquet of flowers, her bridal bouquet, sat on the table beside them. And then, as if the universe wanted to crush me completely, I watched them kiss. Not the awkward kiss of something new. Not the guilty kiss of two people hiding. No, this was practiced. Deep. Familiar. The kind of kiss two people share when they have been together for a long, long time. And then it hit me like a wave of fire and ice all at once. Daniel and Emily weren't just celebrating a stolen kiss. They were celebrating their marriage. My best friend. My childhood sweetheart. The ones I trusted most. And as I stood there in the dark, in a ruined gown, watching the people I loved most betray me so cruelly, I realized my life wasn't destroyed by accident. It was stolen. I stayed frozen by the window, my body pressed against the cold wall, breath shallow, heart racing. I shouldn't have listened. I should have walked away. But something in me, the broken part desperate for answers, kept me there, clinging to the shadows. Inside, Daniel leaned back on the couch, his arm draped over Emily's shoulders. She nestled into him, a satisfied smile painted on her lips. They looked so at ease, so comfortable, as if this was always meant to be. Daniel's voice broke the silence first. She looked pathetic today, standing there, swearing she didn't know him. The more she begged, the more everyone believed she was guilty. He chuckled low, shaking his head. I almost felt bad. Emily laughed, tipping her head back. Almost? Almost, he repeated, smirking. But then I remembered how clingy she's always been, always needing reassurance, always playing the perfect little fiancé. It was suffocating, Em, like she thought my life revolved around her. My stomach twisted. His words cut deeper than any knife. Emily snorted. Clingy? Try pathetic. The girl had everything. Everyone treated her like a princess. Her parents worshipped her, my God, always bragging, always putting her on some pedestal, and she actually believed she was special. Daniel's lips curled into a cruel smile. Not anymore. They both burst into laughter. My throat burned. My fingers dug into the wood of the window frame so hard I thought it might splinter. Emily leaned closer to him, her voice dropping, giddy with cruelty. The best part was watching her face when that man showed up. She looked like she'd been struck by lightning. All those pictures we planted, it was genius, Daniel. Pure genius. My blood went cold. Daniel grinned proudly. It had to be done. My parents would never have let me out of that engagement otherwise. They've been planning this union for years, and I couldn't stand the thought of living with Charlotte forever. I needed a way out, and the setup was perfect. The photos, the accusations, it destroyed her reputation instantly. Clean break. Emily clapped her hands together, mocking. Poor Charlotte, abandoned at the altar. Can you imagine? All those people staring at her, whispering about her. She'll never live it down. Daniel laughed with her, shaking his head. She brought it on herself. She thought she could hold on to me forever. But you and I, we belong together, Em. We always have. My chest caved in as if the air had been sucked from my lungs. My vision blurred with tears. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had planned it. Every moment of heartbreak today had been orchestrated, every tear wrung out of me for their satisfaction. Emily touched his cheek, kissing him softly before pulling back with a wicked grin. And now, everyone thinks she's nothing but a liar. No one will ever believe her side. Not her parents. Not yours. She's finished. They laughed again, louder this time, feeding off each other's cruelty. My knees buckled, but I caught myself against the wall. I wanted to burst inside, to scream, to claw at their faces and make them admit their sins. But what good would it do? My parents had already turned their backs on me. The Harringtons had shamed me. The whole town had watched me walk away in disgrace. Even if I told the truth, now, no one would believe me. It didn't matter. Daniel was right. They had won. Tears streamed down my face as I stumbled away from the window. My wedding dress snagged against the porch railing, tearing the lace, but I didn't stop. I walked into the night, barefoot, broken, carrying nothing but the wreckage of my life. There was no one left for me here. No family, no love, no home. If I stayed, I'd wither under their lies. I would always be the girl who cheated on her wedding day, the girl abandoned by her fiancé, the girl whose own parents cast her out. But if I left, maybe I could become someone new. I looked back once at the house that should have been mine, and saw their shadows moving inside, entwined, laughing, celebrating my downfall. My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to turn away. The night air was cold against my skin, chilling my tears as they fell. I whispered to myself, voice trembling but certain, it ends here. Everything they stole from me, my future, my dignity, my family, I'll never get back. But I can build something new, somewhere else, far away from them. And with that, I walked away. Away from Daniel, away from Emily, away from the ruins of my old life. I didn't know where the road would take me, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never let them see me broken again. This was the end of Charlotte they thought they had destroyed, and the beginning of someone they would never see coming. When I left that night, I didn't take anything with me. No suitcase, no money, no home to return to. My wedding gown, the torn, dirty reminder of everything I'd lost, was the only thing I carried into the world. I walked until my feet blistered, until the gown snagged and shredded against the ground, until I was so far from the Harringtons, from my parents, from my old life, that the air itself felt different. I boarded a bus the next morning with what little cash I had left in my purse. The destination didn't matter. I just told the driver to take me as far as that money would go. I pressed my forehead to the window as the countryside blurred into highways, and highways blurred into a skyline I didn't recognize. A new city. A place where no one knew my name. I rented the smallest room I could find, if you could even call it a room. It was in the basement of an old apartment building, the kind of place where the pipes rattled at night and the walls smelled faintly of mildew. The landlord didn't ask questions, just took my money and handed me a rusted key. The mattress was thin, the blanket scratchy, and the single bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered every time I turned it on. But it was mine. And more importantly, no one here looked at me like I was a disgrace. No one whispered my name like it was poison. Still, when I lay down that first night, staring at the cracked ceiling, the weight of everything I'd lost pressed down on me. Daniel's laughter, Emily's kiss, my father's words, "You are no daughter of mine." It all replayed in my head, a cruel chorus I couldn't silence. I didn't cry anymore. My tears had dried the night I heard them together. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was nothing. Just empty. The next weeks blurred into survival. I pawned off the jewelry I had left, Small things, gifts from childhood birthdays. With that money, I bought secondhand clothes, plain enough to blend in. I walked the streets looking for work, stopping at diners, offices, shops, but everywhere I went, the answer was the same. We're not hiring. Sorry. You don't have enough experience. Experience. How could I explain that the only life I'd prepared for was to be Daniel's wife? That everything I knew about the future had been tied to him? So I kept trying. Every morning, I forced myself out of bed, even when my body begged me to stay buried under the thin blanket. I knocked on doors. I smiled faintly when I had to, though the smile never reached my eyes. But the world was not kind to broken girls. One night, I came back to the room with blistered feet and an empty stomach. I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror. My hair was dull, my cheeks hollow, my eyes sunken. I looked like someone else, someone who had died and left a shell behind. And maybe that's exactly what I was. Weeks later, I found myself sitting in the lobby of a skyscraper so tall it seemed to cut the clouds. I had seen the job listing in a newspaper crumpled on the sidewalk. Secretary wanted, Harrington & Co. Industries. The name Harrington made me flinch. Not the same family, but a cruel reminder. I almost crumpled the paper and walked away. But desperation pushed me forward. Inside, the building gleamed with glass and steel, polished floors that echoed every step. Men and women in suits moved briskly, their expressions sharp and untouchable. I clutched my thin folder of resumes, most of them blank, filled with the bare minimum of skills, and forced myself to the front desk. The receptionist gave me a quick glance, her eyes lingering on my worn shoes and frayed blazer. "Interview for secretary?" she asked flatly. "Yes," I said, my voice low but steady. She pointed me toward the elevator. "Top floor. Mr. Blackwood will see you." Mr. Blackwood. The name alone carried weight. I had heard whispers in the lobby already about Alexander Blackwood, the ruthless billionaire who built his empire with iron fists and ice in his veins. People said he was brilliant, but merciless. When the elevator doors opened to the top floor, I understood why. The office wasn't just an office, it was a fortress. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline. A desk carved from black marble sat in the center, and behind it was a man who looked every bit the predator people described. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair slicked back, eyes as sharp as blades. He didn't look up when I entered. He simply said, "Sit." I obeyed. He scanned my resume, flipping the single page with a flick of his hand. No college degree, no prior office experience, no references. He set the paper down and finally looked at me. His gaze pinned me in place. "Why are you here?" I swallowed hard. "Because I need work. I'll learn. I'll work harder than anyone else." His lip twitched in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Everyone says that." Silence hung heavy between us. I didn't break it. I couldn't. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was a puzzle. "Most people would have left the moment they saw the requirements, but you came up anyway. Why?" I hesitated, then answered honestly, "Because I have nothing left to lose." Something flickered in his expression, just for a moment, before the mask slid back in place. "You start tomorrow," he said. I blinked. I got the job?" "You got a chance?" he corrected. "One mistake and you're gone. Do you understand?" "Yes," I whispered. The first weeks were brutal. Alexander Blackwood was everything people said and worse. He barked orders without looking up. He demanded perfection, down to the last detail. If I brought his coffee 2 minutes late, he glared as if I had committed a crime. If I misspelled a name in an email, he shredded me with a single sentence. But I endured it. I showed up early. I stayed late. I kept my back straight and my face expressionless. The old Charlotte, the one who giggled with Emily who dreamed of fairy tale weddings, was gone. This new Charlotte didn't smile, didn't hope, didn't break. I was living, yes, but only barely, like a ghost haunting the office, moving from task to task with no spark left in me. And yet, months passed and something began to change. He noticed me. Not in the way men usually notice women, but in the way a commander notices a soldier who doesn't falter. He began giving me harder assignments, scheduling meetings, preparing reports, even handling sensitive calls. At first, I thought it was a test, another way to watch me fail. But when I didn't, when I stood firm under the weight, I saw something shift in his eyes. One evening, as I handed him the last file of the day, he said quietly, "You never complain." I paused, unsure if it was a compliment or a criticism. Should I? His gaze held mine for a moment longer than usual. Then he said, No. That's why you're still here. It wasn't warmth, it wasn't kindness, but it was recognition. And for the first time in months, I felt something. Not happiness, not joy, but a flicker of strength. I was still exidentist, smiling when I had to, hollow inside when I didn't. But brick by brick, in that glass fortress of an office, I was building something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope. Not yet. But resilience. And resilience, I was beginning to learn, was stronger than love. 3 years had passed since the day Charlotte Green walked into my office, clutching a thin folder with nothing but courage keeping her upright. 3 years since she sat across from me with those hollow eyes and said the words, I have nothing left to lose. I hadn't known then that those words would follow me, echo in the quiet moments of my life. My world had always been clean, sharp, precise. I was raised to run this empire with discipline. My father had built Harrington & Co. with his bare hands before he passed, and my mother made sure I carried his legacy with strength. My family was proud, loving, and whole. When I went home after long work days, I was met with warmth, with dinner at a table where laughter never failed to appear. Yet, in the middle of that warmth, my thoughts often strayed back to her. Charlotte was unlike anyone I'd ever employed. At first, she was nothing but quiet obedience. She came early, stayed late, never faltered. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She didn't smile unless required. In a company filled with chatter, ambition, and politics, she was an island. Untouched, reserved, self-contained. She ate her lunch alone, always at the corner table in the cafeteria. She never joined after-hours gatherings. She kept her world tightly guarded, as though any crack would expose something she refused to share. But I saw her growth. She learned quickly, adapting to every storm I threw her way. Reports I once corrected became flawless. Meetings she once only scheduled, she began to lead in my absence. Her handwriting, her tone in emails, her punctuality, everything sharpened with discipline that rivaled my own. 3 years turned her from the fragile ghost I first met into someone unshakable. And somewhere in those years, I noticed my gaze lingered too long when she entered a room, that her silence no longer felt like emptiness but strength. And damn me, I started to admire her. At dinner one evening, my mother cleared her throat with that particular sound that always meant trouble. Alexander, she said, spooning mashed potatoes onto my plate like I was still her boy. When are you going to bring home a girl? I sighed, pushing the food around with my fork. I don't have time for that, Mother. You always say that, she shot back. You're 32. Your father was married at 27. Do you want to work yourself into old age without a family? My sister, laughing softly, chimed in. She's right, Alex. You can't marry your company. I leaned back in my chair, pretending to be unaffected. But the truth was, one face flashed into my mind. Pale skin, tired but steady eyes, the woman who never asked for more than her work allowed. Charlotte. I didn't say her name immediately, but I found myself speaking before I could stop. There is someone. The room went silent. My mother's eyes lit up, brighter than I'd seen in years. Who? She demanded. I hesitated, then said, Her name is Charlotte. She works for me. Hardworking, disciplined, reserved. She's trustworthy. She has no family. She's alone. But she's remarkable. The table buzzed with excitement. My mother clasped her hands together. Bring her to dinner, Alexander. I want to meet her. I didn't correct her. I didn't say that Charlotte had given me no indication she wanted marriage or anything at all, but the thought of her sitting at this table, where laughter and warmth surrounded her instead of betrayal, burned itself into my mind. Days later, after a morning of back-to-back meetings, I asked my driver to stop at a small restaurant tucked between tall buildings. I had noticed Charlotte glance at it once when we passed, though she said nothing. Let's eat here, I said, surprising even myself. She blinked. Here? With me? Yes, I said, already stepping out of the car. Inside it was modest. Wooden tables, the smell of fresh bread, soft music in the background. She sat across from me stiffly, as though unsure how to behave outside the marble walls of our office. I ordered for both of us, sensing she wouldn't. When the plates arrived, steaming and rich, I leaned back and studied her. You've worked for me 3 years, Charlotte, I began. And in all that time, you've never spoken about yourself. She kept her gaze on her plate. There's not much to say. There's always something to say, I countered. For the first time, she looked up. Her eyes were steady, guarded as ever. What do you want me to tell you, Mr. Blackwood? Alexander, I corrected gently. Call me Alexander. Something shifted in her expression. It was the first time I had offered her a bridge out of the cold hierarchy we lived in. We ate in silence for a while before I spoke again, softer this time. My family wants me to marry. They think it's time. She froze, her fork clinking against the plate. And you're telling me this because? Because I've thought about it, I admitted. And when I did, I thought of you. Her lips parted slightly, shock flashing across her face. She wasn't often caught off guard, but now she was. You, her voice faltered. You thought of me for marriage? Yes. I kept my tone firm. You are dedicated, honest, stronger than anyone I've met. My family wants to meet you. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. If you're willing, I'd like to bring you home for dinner. Then, we can speak of marriage. The silence that followed was heavy. She looked at me as though trying to read a hidden motive. Perhaps she expected mockery, another betrayal. Finally, she whispered, I need to meet them first. Then, I'll give you my answer. Relief washed over me in a way I hadn't expected. Then it's settled, I said, leaning back. Dinner with my family, and after that, Charlotte, the choice will be yours. For the first time in 3 years, I thought I saw the faintest flicker of life in her eyes. Not a smile, not hope, but a spark. And that was enough. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I walked into Alexander Blackwood's company with nothing but a resume printed at a cheap copy shop and a heart that had forgotten how to beat with hope. Those years changed me. I was no longer the girl who had fled her hometown in a torn wedding dress, clutching the scraps of a broken life. Slowly, painfully, I rebuilt myself. My first rented room had been no more than a closet with peeling paint and creaking pipes, but now I lived in a small, cozy house on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a balcony with potted plants. But it was mine. It smelled of coffee in the morning and fresh sheets at night. And yet the past never truly left. Some nights, I still woke drenched in sweat, gasping from nightmares where strangers pointed at me, shouting cheater, liar. I would sit on the edge of the bed, clutching my chest, reminding myself I wasn't there anymore. I wasn't her anymore. Still, the scars lingered. When Alexander asked me to join him at the restaurant, I didn't think much of it. But then he said the words I never imagined hearing again. Marriage. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. But no, he had looked directly at me, his eyes unwavering. He wanted me, not as an employee, not as a secretary, but as a partner. That night, back in my little house, I sat by the window long after midnight, staring at the city lights. My heart wanted to trust him, but my mind whispered reminders of betrayal. Could anyone really accept me if they knew? Could they believe me where my own family hadn't? I made a decision. If his family accepted me after knowing the truth, if they believed me, I would say yes. If not, then it was better to walk away now than to face the same nightmare twice. The next evening, I stood outside the Blackwood estate. The mansion loomed tall but warm, its golden light spilling out like an invitation. My palms were damp, my heart drumming against my ribs. The door opened, and Alexander's mother, elegant, kind-eyed, welcomed me with open arms. His sister, bright and smiling, hugged me like she had known me for years. At the dinner table, laughter filled the air. His mother spoke with excitement, telling me about family traditions, holiday dinners, memories of Alexander's childhood. Then she reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You've lost your parents, dear, she said softly. From now on, think of me as your mother. I will fill that place in your heart. Her kindness pierced me like a blade. I swallowed hard, tears burning the back of my eyes, but I couldn't keep the lie any longer. I'm sorry, ma'am, I whispered, my voice trembling. That was a lie I told everyone. The room went silent. Forks clinked against plates. All eyes turned to me. Alexander leaned forward, brows furrowed. Charlotte? I took a deep breath, forcing the words out. I had parents, a family, a fiancé. On my wedding day, another man came and claimed I was his lover. I was accused of cheating in front of everyone. My parents abandoned me. My fiancé married my friend that same day. They all turned their backs on me. I left, with nothing but my dress. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. His mother's eyes glistened. His sister's mouth hung open. Alexander's jaw tightened, his knuckles white against the table. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "Who was your family, Charlotte? Who was your ex-fiancé?" I hesitated, but I gave him the names, the Greens and the Turners. Recognition flickered across his sister's face. She gasped. "Wait, I remember that. There was a scandal in the news years ago. A bride accused of cheating on her wedding day. People called her a liar, a disgrace. Was that you?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, that was me." Pain twisted in my chest as I forced myself to continue. "That's why I said Alexander deserves better. He deserves a woman with a clean name, not one haunted by a scandal. I don't want to bring shame to your family. I don't want—" My voice cracked. "I don't want to ruin his life the way I ruined mine." For the first time in years, tears slipped down my cheeks. But then, something happened I never expected. Alexander's mother stood up, walked to my side, and pulled me into her arms. Her embrace was firm, warm, motherly, the kind I had been starved of for years. "You did not ruin your life, my dear," she whispered fiercely. "You were wronged. And I believe you. I believe your innocence. I would be proud to call you my daughter." I sobbed into her shoulder, unable to stop. Alexander came around the table, kneeling beside me. His hand found mine, strong and steady. "Charlotte, listen to me. You are not tainted. You are not broken. You're the strongest woman I know. I will never let anyone speak against you again." His sister leaned in too, tears in her eyes. "We don't care about your past. What matters is who you are now, and we love you for it." For the first time in years, I felt it. The ache in my chest breaking open, not from pain but from release. The tears poured freely, but they weren't the same as before. These were healing. I wasn't alone anymore. Later that night, as the laughter returned to the table, Alexander looked at me with those piercing eyes and asked once more, "Charlotte Green, will you marry me?" This time, through tears and trembling lips, I whispered, "Yes." His mother cheered, his sister clapped her hands, and Alexander pulled me into his arms as though he would never let go. And for the first time in years, I cried. Happy tears. From the moment Charlotte's trembling voice revealed the truth at my family's dinner table, something inside me shifted forever. I had always admired her as my secretary, the most dedicated, unshakable woman I had ever worked with. But now I saw her differently. She wasn't just strong, she was a survivor. And I made a silent vow that night. I would take care of her. I would protect her, even from ghosts she thought she had to fight alone. Life after her acceptance was like sunlight breaking into a house that had been shut for years. At the office, Charlotte was still her reserved self. But I noticed subtle changes. She smiled a little more often, laughed quietly when my sister dropped by with coffee, and teased me for overworking. My mother, too, began to accidentally stop by, whisking Charlotte away in the middle of meetings to go shopping or simply to talk about wedding decorations. I pretended to be annoyed, but truthfully, watching Charlotte glow under their affection was the best sight of my life. Our wedding day was simple, just as she wished, not in a church, but on a quiet stretch of beach at sunset. White fabric draped over wooden arches, soft music carried by the waves, my mother crying into tissues, and my sister cheering louder than the guests. Charlotte walked toward me barefoot, the sand brushing against the hem of her dress. For the first time since I had known her, her smile was unburdened. She looked like peace itself. When we said our vows, I leaned close enough for only her to hear. "I know what they stole from you," I whispered. "But I promise, no one will ever take from you again." Her hand tightened in mine, and in her eyes I saw tears, not of pain, but of hope. That night, in the quiet of our home, we shared a shy, hesitant first night together. There was no rush, no demand, just whispered words, lingering touches, and the gentle rediscovery of intimacy. We fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, as though our bodies knew we were finally safe. Months passed in happiness I hadn't thought possible. Our mornings were filled with laughter over burnt toast or stolen kisses before I left for the office. My family adored her, and slowly, Charlotte began to believe she belonged. But happiness is fragile. One night, I woke to the sound of her screams. I sat upright, heart pounding, as she thrashed beside me, tangled in sheets. Tears streamed down her face, and her voice broke the stillness of the night. "Why, Daniel? Why did you destroy me?" Her words cut through me like knives. I shook her gently awake, gathering her trembling body against my chest. My mother and sister, alerted by the noise, rushed into the room. They hovered anxiously, their faces pale with worry as I rocked Charlotte back and forth. "It's just a nightmare," I whispered, stroking her hair. "You're safe. You're with me." But my mind was not calm. Daniel? She had spoken his name. When her breathing slowed, I looked down at her pale face. "Charlotte," I murmured softly, "are you hiding something from me? Please tell me. I beg you. No more secrets." Her eyes fluttered open, wet with tears, and for a long time she said nothing. But finally her lips parted. That night, the rest of her truth poured out. She told us everything. How after being humiliated and abandoned on her wedding day, she went back home only to be thrown out like trash. How? Desperate for answers, she went to the house that was supposed to be hers and Daniel's. Her voice broke as she recalled peeking through the window, seeing Daniel and Emily, her best friend, laughing, kissing, like lovers who had been together for years. And then she heard them speak. Daniel mocking her, calling her clingy, a burden he only endured because of his parents' wishes. Emily laughing, calling her names, saying she had lived like a princess for too long, and finally got what she deserved. Charlotte had stood there in shock, realizing it had all been a scheme. Planned, cruel, deliberate. She had been set up by the people she trusted most. Her voice cracked as she ended her story. I knew no one would believe me. Not after everything. Not after what the world saw. So I kept it to myself and left. I wanted to start over, to bury the past. But it still haunts me. The room was silent when she finished. My mother's hand covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. My sister's fists clenched on the edge of the bed, her face twisted in disbelief and rage. I couldn't speak. My jaw locked so tightly I thought it might break. The image of Daniel's smug laughter, Emily's cruelty, it ignited something primal in me. Fury. A kind I had never known before. Charlotte sobbed quietly into her hands, and my mother rushed forward, holding her. "My poor child," she whispered, rocking her as though Charlotte were her own flesh and blood. "You carried this pain alone all these years, but not anymore. Never again." My sister knelt beside her too. "They don't deserve your tears. You have us now. You have a family who believes you." Charlotte eventually drifted into an exhausted sleep, her face still damp with tears. I stayed beside her, my hand clasped around hers, but my mind burned. I looked at her fragile form, broken yet so resilient, and my chest ached. She had endured betrayal, cruelty, abandonment, but not anymore. Not while I was alive. That night, as the house fell quiet, I slipped into my study. The fury inside me was ice cold now, sharp and steady. Daniel and Emily had stolen years of her life. They had laughed while she was destroyed. That would end. I picked up my phone, dialing a number I had only used for business emergencies. My private investigator answered on the second ring. "It's Alexander Blackwood," I said. My voice low. Dangerous. "I need everything on Daniel Turner and his family. Dig deep. Leave nothing hidden." As I ended the call, I looked back toward our bedroom where Charlotte slept under my mother's watchful care. "I swear to you," I whispered into the night, "I will make them pay for every tear you've shed." The investigator came back with results quicker than I expected. A thick envelope landed on my desk, heavy with details that made my blood boil. Daniel Turner and Emily, the perfect couple in the eyes of society. They lived in the mansion that was meant to be Charlotte's home, flaunting their wealth like royalty. Daniel had taken over a significant part of his family's company, and together with Emily's flair for social circles, they had become untouchable. Magazines called them the golden pair. Investors adored them. Their pictures filled society pages, all smiles and champagne flutes, but the documents told another story. Daniel's company wasn't as stable as it looked. He had debts hidden under subsidiary accounts, and his success was heavily dependent on a handful of loyal clients. Emily, though adored socially, had her fair share of enemies. Women who whispered about her cunning, men who didn't trust her games. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. Smug. Careless. Overconfident. I muttered. Perfect. My plan began to form like a storm gathering over calm waters. Weeks later, I returned to the very city Charlotte had fled years ago. But this time she wasn't alone. My family came with us, and so did my name, my empire, my influence. The media swarmed the moment we landed. Flashbulbs snapped, microphones shoved forward, questions raining down. Mr. Blackwood, is this your wife? Mrs. Blackwood, how does it feel being married to one of the country's most powerful businessmen? Will you be settling here permanently? Charlotte stayed close to me, her hand tucked tightly in mine, her composure icy despite the chaos. She wore a sleek black dress, her head high, her every step radiating dignity. This is my wife, Charlotte Blackwood, I told the press, my voice steady, commanding. And yes, we will be expanding our operations here. I am proud to have my family by my side. The words echoed across the headlines the next day, and they reached Daniel and Emily, and, most importantly, Charlotte's parents. The first time we met Daniel again was at a grand gala, an event dripping with diamonds and arrogance. I saw him before he saw us. He looked exactly as the photos showed, polished, confident, his arm looped around Emily's waist as though she were a trophy he owned. When his eyes finally fell on Charlotte, the smirk slipped for just a second before returning, sharper. Emily's face froze in disbelief, but quickly melted into something venomously sweet. Charlotte's former in-laws were there too. Daniel's parents, stiff with pride, and, at the edge of the room, Charlotte's own parents. Her parents glanced at her once, and then away, as though she were nothing more than a stranger. My jaw clenched. Charlotte's grip on my arm tightened. Daniel's mother approached us first, her lips curled in disdain. Well, if it isn't the runaway bride, how bold of you to show your face here. My mother stepped forward before Charlotte could respond. Her voice was smooth but carried steel. Watch your tongue. She is my daughter now, and unlike some families, we don't discard our children when times are difficult. Gasps rippled around us. Daniel's mother faltered, her face reddening. Emily attempted to laugh it off. Oh dear, no one holds grudges forever. We were just remembering that scandalous day, weren't we, Daniel? Daniel smirked. Some stains never wash away. I leaned down slightly, close enough for him to hear. Neither does rot, Daniel, and yours is showing. His expression stiffened. Across the room, Charlotte's parents remained silent. They neither defended her nor greeted her. Their indifference was a blade sharper than mockery. Charlotte's face didn't crack, but I felt her pain in the way her body leaned closer into me, as though drawing strength. My mother, however, wasn't finished. She turned her gaze on both families. Let me be perfectly clear. Charlotte Blackwood is loved, protected, and cherished. If anyone dares insult her again, they will answer to me. And I assure you, my family is far more powerful than yours. The silence that followed was heavy, humiliating for them. The gala shifted back into music, but the tension lingered. That night, as Charlotte and I sat in the car, she whispered, "Thank you for standing by me, for making me feel like I'm worth defending." I brushed a kiss against her forehead. You're worth everything, Charlotte. But inside, my mind was on fire. Daniel thought he was untouchable. He thought he could mock her openly, pretend the past was buried. He had no idea the storm I was about to unleash. The next step began quietly. I started reaching out to Daniel's clients, through subsidiaries, through mutual contacts, through whispers in the right ears. Our offers were better, our guarantees stronger, our influence undeniable. One by one, his loyal pillars began to shift, subtly moving toward me. Daniel wouldn't see it coming. By the time he realized, the ground beneath his empire would already be cracking. I poured myself a glass of whiskey that night, standing by the window of our suite while Charlotte slept. This is only the beginning, I murmured to the city lights. For every tear she shed, I'll take a piece of your world, Daniel, until nothing is left. And as I spoke, I felt no guilt, only justice. It was a calm afternoon when Emily showed up at our doorstep. She wore a smile too polished to be real, her designer dress hugging her frame like armor. Alexander, she cooed, tilting her head, it's been forever. Her eyes flicked toward Charlotte, pretending warmth, though venom hid beneath the sweetness. I thought I'd come by personally to invite you both to my little gathering. Daniel and I are hosting a party. Everyone who's anyone will be there. You must come. Old friends shouldn't drift apart, don't you think? Charlotte stood silent by my side, her hand tightening around mine. Her expression was calm, but I felt the tension in her fingers. I gave Emily the kind of smile a hunter gives before the trap snaps shut. Of course, Emily. We wouldn't miss it. Her eyes gleamed with triumph. She thought she had cornered us, parading her perfect life in front of the woman she had wronged. She had no idea she'd just set the stage for her own destruction. The night of the party arrived. Emily had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers glowed over marble floors, laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, and every influential name in the city seemed to be there. Charlotte! Emily swept toward us the moment we entered, her arms outstretched like a benevolent queen greeting her subjects. She kissed the air beside Charlotte's cheek. I'm so happy you came. It shows such grace, considering the past. Whispers rippled around us. I caught the words cheating bride more than once. People were praising Emily's supposed kindness for forgiving her old friend. She played her role well. Humble smiles, soft tones, eyes shining with fake generosity. Daniel stood beside her, stiff in his tailored suit, his smugness carefully masked under politeness. His parents floated nearby, avoiding us altogether, while Charlotte's parents barely glanced in our direction. Through it all, Charlotte held her head high, silent, graceful. My mother and sister flanked her, offering warmth with every smile, every whispered word. They knew tonight wasn't about enduring humiliation, it was about waiting. And then Emily struck. She raised her glass, tapping it lightly. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying across the room, I have a very special announcement to make. She turned to Daniel, then rested a hand over her stomach, her smile radiant. We're expecting a baby. Gasps of delight erupted. Applause followed. Emily basked in it, her eyes flickering to Charlotte, smug satisfaction dripping from her gaze. Her look said it all. I won. I have the man, the wealth, the family. You have nothing. Charlotte's face remained unreadable. I felt her fingers tremble just slightly in mine. I squeezed her hand. Patience, I thought. The storm is almost here. The storm arrived moments later. The grand doors at the end of the hall swung open. A man walked in, his steps confident, his voice booming as he called out, Emily Turner! Every head turned. My lips curled into the faintest smile. It was him. The same man who had destroyed Charlotte's life with false accusations. Gasps filled the room as he strode forward. Emily Turner, he repeated. Why don't you tell your husband the truth? That child you're carrying, it's mine. Chaos broke instantly. Emily's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. You liar, she screamed, her face blotched with panic. I don't even know you. Daniel spun toward her, his confusion evident. Emily, what is he talking about? The man smirked, pulling out his phone. Don't pretend, darling. We've met enough times for pictures, haven't we? He flicked his screen and projected images filled the screen behind him. Emily, laughing, kissing him, curled in his arms. The same smile she had worn tonight, only rawer, more real. No, Emily's shriek pierced the air. This is fake. It's Photoshop. Just like the photos at Charlotte's wedding. He's lying, Daniel. He's just an actor, a pathetic small-time actor you hired. The room froze. Emily clamped her hand over her mouth, realizing too late what she had confessed. The whispers rose like fire. Actor? Wedding? Faces turned, eyes wide. Daniel's face drained of color. Sweat beaded on his forehead. What did you just say? The man straightened, his voice firm. I was hired. By Daniel. Paid handsomely to pretend Charlotte was my lover, to ruin her life so he could marry Emily without losing his inheritance. A collective gasp tore through the hall. Daniel's parents stepped forward, their voices trembling with fury. Daniel, is this true? No. It's not. Daniel stuttered, but the evidence was undeniable. I stepped forward, my voice sharp as a blade. It's true, every word. Before the wedding, Daniel and Emily were already together. They plotted to destroy Charlotte's name. If Daniel refused to marry her, he risked being cut off from his family's wealth. So he staged the perfect scandal, hired an actor, shamed an innocent woman, and all while hiding his own affairs. Gasps filled the hall again. I let my voice rise, cold and merciless. Daniel Turner is not the golden boy you think. He is drowning in debt. His company is collapsing. And Emily, your precious social butterfly, helped him build this empire of lies. Daniel's mother staggered, clutching her chest. His father's face was a storm of rage. You've disgraced this family. You've destroyed everything. Across the room, Charlotte's parents stood pale, trembling. Her mother stepped forward, slapped Daniel hard across the face. You ruined our daughter. You made us throw her away. You monster. Tears filled Charlotte's eyes. She shook her head, her voice breaking. Easy, wasn't it? To believe him. To turn your backs on me without a word. You didn't even ask me. You didn't trust me. And now you want to say sorry? She choked, wiping her tears. No, I don't trust you either. You don't deserve me. Her parents broke down, begging, but Charlotte turned away. This time, she wasn't the abandoned. She was the one walking out. The scandal erupted like wildfire. By the next morning, Daniel and Emily were splashed across every headline, their lies exposed, their reputations shattered. Daniel's parents disowned him, casting him out. Their mansion, their power, it all crumbled in days. Justice had been served. And for Charlotte, freedom had finally come. Months later, our family gathered in the beach house, sunlight pouring through open windows. Charlotte sat beside me, her face glowing in a way I hadn't seen before. She placed my hand gently over her stomach. Alexander, we're going to be parents. I pulled her close, kissing her temple as tears pricked my eyes. You've given me everything, Charlotte, and I'll spend my life making sure no one ever takes your smile again. My mother and sister burst into happy tears, pulling Charlotte into their arms. Laughter, joy, and warmth filled the room. This time, it wasn't a wedding that began with betrayal. It was a family that began with truth, healing, and love. And this time, Charlotte wasn't walking away from anything. She was walking into the life she always deserved.